All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going deep. I mean, really deep. We're going to explore the very fabric of our own minds, drawing on the incredible wisdom of Buddhist philosophy and the razor-sharp insights of Jiddu Krishnamurti to really unpack the machinery of our inner world.
So, let's just jump right in with a question that, honestly, probably hits home for a lot of us. It's this feeling, right, this constant pull between what was and what will be. It's like being on a mental treadmill that feels impossible to get off of. But what's actually driving this thing? What's powering this loop? Well, it turns out the root of this whole thing is this fundamental split we create inside our own heads. Just think about it for a second. There's the I, the watcher, the part of you that's always observing, always judging. And then there's the me. That's the story, the collection of memories, hurts, and hopes that's being watched. And this isn't just some weird personality quirk, you know? This division is the actual engine that powers our inner conflict. Okay, so this feeling of being divided, that's our starting point. This is where we begin to understand how we construct our own personal reality, especially our whole relationship with time. And, spoiler alert, it's way more complicated than just looking at a clock. You know that constant mental ping-pong between memories of the past and all your plans for the future? That's what we're calling psychological time. It has nothing to do with the time on your phone. This is the time of regret, of nostalgia, of anxiety, of hope. And it's created entirely by that I looking at the me, constantly replaying old scenes or scripting future ones. It feels so real, doesn't it? But get this, it's a total mental construct, completely separate from what's actually happening right now. And this is the really big takeaway here. What we experience as the solid, undeniable reality of past, present, and future is really just a side effect of this inner chatter. They're not these solid, real places. They're just labels our mind slaps on things as it's constantly trying to move away from the only thing that is actually real, this very moment. Okay, so how does this self-story actually get built, moment by moment? You might think it's some deep, dark mystery, but it's not. In fact, ancient Buddhist philosophy laid out the exact blueprint for this, a precise, step-by-step causal chain that explains the whole process.
This process has a name. It's called paticcasamuppada, or dependent origination, and it just lays it all out, step by step. Let's walk through it. Okay, step 1, feeling. A sensation pops up. It can be pleasant, unpleasant, whatever. Step 2, craving. Instantly, like a reflex, we react. We either want more of it or we want it to go away. Step 3, clinging. We grab onto that desire or that aversion and we do not let go. We feed it, we make it solid. And boom, step 4, becoming. This entire chain reaction is what constantly generates the psychological story of me, the one who's at the center of all this drama.
And what this shows so brilliantly is that the self isn't some noun, some static thing you have. It's a verb. It's an action. Bhava, or becoming, is this ceaseless, non-stop activity of creating and propping up the story of me, all based on that chain reaction we just talked about.
So now we get to the really cool part. What's fascinating is how these totally different wisdom traditions, with their own unique language and style, all point to the same way out of this trap. And it's not about fighting yourself, it's about seeing the mechanism for what it is.
And this leads to a pretty revolutionary insight. Liberation isn't about achieving some new, shiny, enlightened self. It's simply about the ending of the conditioning that builds the old one in the first place. Think of it this way. It's what happens when that becoming engine we just looked at finally completely runs out of gas.
And this is just wild. You've got 3 totally different paths, all using their own maps and their own words, but they all arrive at the exact same destination. Theravada Buddhism talks about anatta, or non-self, which is seeing the causes that create the self and just letting them stop. Mahayana Buddhism talks about shunyata, or emptiness, the realization that nothing, including time itself, has any solid, independent existence. And then you have Krishnamurti, who just cuts right to the bone. The observer is the observed. That whole split we started with, it's an illusion. I mean, look at this. 3 paths, 1 incredible insight.
This brings us to a really key idea. It's called asymmetrical cessation. And you've got to get this because it's so important. It means you don't replace the ego with some better self or a true self. When you take away the causes, that craving and clinging, the effect, the ego, just stops arising. It's not like you trade in a bad ego for a good one. Nope, the old one just stops showing up, and nothing has to take its place.
Okay, I know this can all feel a little out there, A bit abstract, so let's try to make it more concrete. We're going to borrow a really powerful metaphor from, of all places, quantum physics. So I want you to imagine reality itself, just raw, unfiltered reality, before our minds start chopping it up as a single, unified, coherent wave of light. It's just what is. No labels, no division, no observers standing apart from it.
Now, imagine we force that single wave to pass through a barrier with two separate slits. The second it's forced through those two slits, everything changes. On the other side, you don't get two simple lines. You get this wild, complex, fractured interference pattern. And in our metaphor, what are those two slits? That's the mind creating the knower and the known. That's the split.
So here's the punchline. Our ego, our conflicts, our whole sense of psychological time, that is the interference pattern. It's a very real experience, no doubt, but it's an effect that only exists because of that initial artificial split. The real truth, that single unified wave, exists before the split ever happens.
And that brings us right to the heart of what timeless seeing actually means. It's not some far-out experience of eternity that you have within time and then, remember later. No. It is the complete and total shutdown of the entire mechanism. It's the moment the factory that's been churning out cytological time 24/7 just shuts down. Permanently.
And that leaves us with one last, big, provocative question to chew on. If that whole interference pattern, the story of I and me, the baggage from the past, the worries for the future, if that whole thing just dissolves because its cause is gone, what's left? What does it mean to just see without that split getting in the way?